In this video, I will show you how to blend with colour pencils successfully. The first thing that we are going to do is select the colours that we would like to blend together. You will notice that I have arranged colours into the primary and secondary colours in which they create when mixed together. So primary yellow and primary red create orange together, and these are the colours that we are going to blend with to begin with. After that, we could then move on to blending together the primary colours that create the secondary colours, such as secondary green, which is created by yellow and blue, and secondary purple, which is created by blue and red. For today, we are going to use these colours here. I find that using yellow, red and orange is a good entry level when you are practicing your blending techniques. First of all, a top tip with any kind of shading with colour pencils is to always start with the lightest in your colour range. In this instance, that would be the yellow pencil. This can be a bit tricky when you come to darker colours such as the red, purple and blue. But ideally, you would want to start with the lightest of these colours, especially when you are learning. In this instance, it would be the red. Although in this instance, red is actually the darkest colour. It depends on which colours you are choosing to blend. As I said before, this is a good start. Yellow is our lightest colour in this colour selection, and what we are going to do is create a tonal bar. And what I like to get students to do is first get the hang of just shading in one direction. So to do this, we will draw a very small rectangular shape onto our cartridge paper or paper that you have at home. The idea is that you are going to shade through the primary into the secondary into the primary. So that order is going to go yellow, blending into orange, blending into red. As we know, these two colours create this colour. So when we are overlapping our shading, we want to make sure that the secondary colour that is created by the two primary colours is in the centre. First of all, we would like to start off with our yellow. Now, we probably want to split our bar up into 3 sections. This does not involve you drawing a line all the way through. There is no need for this because we want to gradually fade them into each other. But it can be helpful for you to mark out. For some students will benefit from having the colours written down at the bottom of the bar, just as a guide. You do what you feel comfortable with doing. To start shading, we want to make sure that we're shading against the longest side of the bar, okay, lengthways. We're not going to go up and down along this shortest side of the bar because that will make it harder when we want to fade into the next colour in the sequence. So shading along the longest section of your rectangular bar shape, you are going to put down a very, very, very light pressure worth of colour onto your colour bar. You will notice that I'm trying to keep my lines really close together, so there's no scribbly lines on there. That's not what we want today. There's no really hard pressure on there. That's also not what we want today. Just a very light layer, so light physical pressure when holding the pencil, shading along the longest part of our rectangle and going over the blend line. So this line here represents where we will start the orange. We're just going to tuck the yellow just a little bit over that line. This is going to help us when we come to shading and trying to merge those two colours together afterwards. Next, I'm going to start with my next colour. Obviously in this sequence it's orange. So again, using really light pressure, so light, like a fairy's holding your pencil, it's that light. With this darker colour might be more visible to you on the video. You can start to see this a little bit more vibrant than the yellow. You can see that I'm taking it really slowly so that you can see all the lines that I'm placing down. You want to put just one layer of each colour to begin with, and then we will build it up gradually. So you can see there that none of my lines, are not all going in different directions like this. It's not really hard pressure like this. This is not what we want today. We want really faint shading, but we do want to just tuck our shading over the edge of where the red should come in. So our marker is here. We're just going to overlap and go slightly over into the red box. This will help, as you can see here, where it comes to the blend line. Next colour in our sequence is red. Again, shading along in the same direction. This time you will have to really control your pressure. The darker the colour, the more control you must exercise with your pencil. And you can see we've just put the last layer on at the end, first one of red, last one in the sequence, really nice and light, making sure that our shading is nice and consistent. That means that you can't see lots of white lines showing through like on this version here. It's not really super pressure, which isn't a controlled way to blend or shade. It's nice and light. Now you might be thinking, well, that's not quite vibrant at the moment, and I would agree with you because we're not yet finished. The next stage is for us to add a second layer with each colour and maybe even a third layer with each colour. So, starting again in our sequence, using our yellow, we are going to add one more layer over the top of this, same pressure of the pencil. That's really important. You'll hear me say all the time the same things about pressure of the pencil. It's always very, very, very faint, like a fairy's holding your pencil. It's that faint. Now you can see already, just with 2 layers of the same pressure of pencil, the appearance of the colour is more yellow, more vibrant this time. Let's see if the same thing happens with the orange. So using just exactly the same pressure of pencil, absolutely no change in my pressure whatsoever. It's very, very faint. I am going to speed up my shading so that you can see the results a bit quicker. Although I'm going quite fast here, I'm not actually pressing harder. I would not recommend that you go as quickly as I'm going here if you're starting out with this skill. You notice that here we have started to get a gradual fade into each other and the oranges become more vibrant. Let's see what happens when we add a second layer of red using exactly the same light pressure of our pencil. So in the same direction, not changing direction of shading at all. Nice light pressure of the pencil. What is happening here? We can see that the colour is becoming more vibrant, more dense. And that is because we are layering now on top of each other different layers of colour, and it's making the colour more vibrant for us. Let's see what happens when we add a third layer. Nice light pressure. Please don't be tempted to go as quickly as how I'm shading here. I've been doing it for a very long time, so I can still keep good control of the pressure of my pencil when shading quickly. If you're starting out with this skill, when you go really fast when you're shading, it tends to alter the pressure and you tend to press harder. It's best for you if you slow it right down and try to get that control, try to get that pressure. Now, everybody's pressure of pencil on paper is going to be slightly different from the next person, and that is okay. You just need to find which works for you the best. A top tip for you when you are trying to find a light pressure for shading with your pencil or for when you're drawing with just a normal graphite pencil is to check where you're holding your pencil. When we are writing, we tend to hold our pencil right down at the end here, and that's good for control, for when we're making those details with the letters. When we are shading, it often relieves some of the pressure coming through the nib if we hold our pencil a little bit further back. Not all the way up here, because then you will lose control. Even I couldn't shade like that and have good control. Here, you want to be thinking about just a little bit further up from the nib of your pencil. Not quite right down here because you will tend to lean on your pencil more, but just holding it a little bit further back. Find where works for you. Everybody is different, and that is okay. Now, you can see that my shading is starting to blend really nicely together. But what happens if this goes a bit wrong for you? Well, I'm going to give you some top tips with the yellow and the orange. If I was to just quickly add down here a nice light pressure, even consistent coverage of yellow, and I want to try to blend in my orange above it, I first need to make sure that the two colours overlap each other. That's really important. So any colours that you choose for blending have to overlap each other. And I say to students, always start with your lightest colour and use the lightest colour for blending, for merging. Let's put our layer of orange over the top. Now you'll see that I'm starting to overlap this over the yellow, a nice light layer, just one layer, and see what happens. Okay, they're starting to blend into each other, but it's not quite there, it's not good enough. Using my yellow, I'm going to put more yellow into this mixture. What I don't want to do is put loads and loads of orange into this mixture. If I do that for you here, I'll show you why not. If I start to add a lot of orange, you will notice what's happening here is that it starts to look like block colour next to each other. It's not this nice light faded gradual blend into each other. It's actually turned into something else up here. If I now do light pressure of my orange instead, very, very light, you can see that I've got a much more gradual blend appearing here. Sometimes you will accidentally do this. If you get stuck, if this happens, go back to the lightest colour between the two colours, which in this case is yellow, and you want to try to put a bit more yellow into this mixture. Lightly, you don't have to put a lot of pressure on. Lightly work in, and then very lightly, even more lightly than you have been shading, you need to just add in just a little bit of the darker colour. Just add it in, just gradually add in just a tiny, tiny little bit. What we're trying to do here is we're trying to force these two colours to be friends with each other and gradually fade in together. We will need to use both colours in which to do that, but it works best if you use the lighter colour to do the most of your blending. This is if you get stuck. Some of you will find that you can blend it quite easily just using this technique here. But if you do end up with a section that isn't working very well, isn't blending together very nicely, you will need to use the lightest colour out of your colour choices to try to encourage that they blend together, and then using a tiny, tiny bit of your darker colour just to try to encourage that those two shades mix together so that they fade into one another. What we're trying to avoid is the appearance of two colours just sat next to each other. So two colours just sat next to each other will look like you've created a block like this, like above. whereas these are much more faded, ombre nearly, into each other. That's what we're aiming for. This is the higher level technique. This technique that I'm showing you might have been done with these choice of colours, but this will work with any colours together, any colours at all. To start with, it's a good idea to try primary to secondary to primary, but after that, you can then start to blend colours of your choice. The hardest colours I find to blend together are the colours that have a big difference in value, so big difference in contrast to the light and the dark. For me, that is anything that is yellow and blue. Those two colours I find quite difficult to put together because this is very dark often and then this is much lighter. So you might have to just be extra light with your pressure when adding your blue in here and do a lot more of the blending in this way. Try it yourself, practice on a large sheet of paper. Every time that you practice, you will improve. Don't forget to show me your work and tag the visual arts folder.